Alright, so in this video I'm going to demonstrate more of just the violin in general, kind of establish more information about it. So I haven't really explained all the parts of the violin, so I'm going to do that in this video. This part right here, the top, where it swirls around, it's called the scroll. I mean, kind of self-explanatory. It's not really necessary, but it kind of gives more art to the violin, I guess, in a way. Now up here, where this little divot is with all the strings coming into contact, this is where the peg box is. It's where all the strings, when you come and tune it, all the strings are housed in this location right here. And you basically loosen and tighten the bow, or not the bow, the strings of the violin to get higher or lower tone and pitch. These are the tuning pegs, and they kind of vary in style as well. These are just kind of there for style to make it look better, essentially. And these are wooden. This is what controls the peg box and the strings inside the violin. This entire part right here, from the peg box down to this part right here, is the neck. And this is where you're going to be mainly playing the violin pieces. You're going to shift up, of course, which is a more advanced maneuver, but beginners, I would recommend to just kind of stay on this part. I mean, unless you already have experience, you can go ahead and shift, which I won't be explaining. It's kind of a bit more advanced skill. I'll demonstrate how to in one of my videos, but that's for another video. And this entire piece from where the black comes down to is the fingerboard. This is where you essentially put your fingers down on the board and you establish the sound. And each of these strings, I think I mentioned this already, is G, D, A, E, and you have to kind of know your notes on that as well. I'll cover some of the notes and kind of the scales along with it, but I won't be teaching everything about it, because that's kind of more of a basic skill to be learned, not really like violin, essentially. So then you have the upper part of the violin, right about here. You have your bridge, which holds this from the fingerboard all the way down. It holds the strings up. So you see how it comes up like this at an angle? This is why it comes up at an angle. There's a bridge located here. Outside of that, there's also the fine tuners down here. I only have one, but usually if you're getting a beginner violin, you're gonna get all four. And that's just to make the notes, if you're tuning it, more precise. So if you're missing something out, you don't have to go back to the peg, because this is for more this is for a wider range of tuning. These are the F holes. This is where the sound comes out of. There's a sound post inside the actual violin, and usually there will be an engraving inside the actual violin, telling you the details about where it was made, how it was made, materials, and all that. But this one does not have one of those. This right here, these, or where this is connected to, this is the tailpiece. The tailpiece connects to the chin rest, where you obviously rest your chin, and you want to have that located with the shoulder rest. And that's all connected on the bottom piece, right here, where this, you see, the metal connects to the actual chin rest up on here. Aside from that, there's also bow. And the bow, this is the actual stick from the top to the bottom. And that's where you're basically going to be controlling, or that's what you're going to be controlling. There's a screw right on this part right here that loosens and tightens the bow. I've mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again. It's quite important. You always want to loosen the bow before you're trying to put it in, because the bow is kind of it's kind of like rubber, or like a rubber band. If you always have it stretched out, it's going to weaken the state of the actual hair. And this, the actual hair is made out of horsehair, and you don't want to always have it stretched out. And even when you are playing, you don't want to have it all the way stretched out. You want to have it at a certain length, or not length, a certain dimension of stretch. So right about here, You don't want to have it way too parallel where it's so tight. You'll know when it's tight because the screw, it won't really let you go that far, but you'll be able to feel it. This part down here is the frog. This is where you're going to want to have your fingers located when you're playing. And some exercises on bow control really is just to go up on the violin without kind of dropping it. Don't let gravity take it down. And then when you're all the way up, kind of use your fingers to climb back down to the frog, like such. And it's going to be hard to begin with, but after a while, you'll be able to get it. And this is the padding, where you're going to be able to pad the instrument, or not really pad the instrument, you're going to have a padding for your finger, your index finger, because this is where you're going to be applying the pressure. That's where you apply the actual pressure of the sound in which you're trying to play. And aside from all the parts and pieces of the violin, it's really an intricate but simple contraption. You know, it lets you play music, and violins have been around for a couple centuries now. I think the first being 15th, 16th century, around that time period. And they've changed a lot. They used to not even have the chin rests, and you would have had to just brace and play like that. But yeah, they've come a long way. Bows back then, they would have kind of like an arch to it. They wouldn't be flat, and they'd be a lot shorter. And it just depended on the different styles, like there were the classical time periods, the Baroque, and all that up to the modern. But they still play essentially the same and have the same style of orchestral pieces where in an arrangement all the instruments fall into different categories of playing. And if you do, you also want to remember that rosin, this is very important. You don't want to overcoat the actual part of the hair. You want to have it just so you'll be able to play. You'll know if you have too much when dust is able to come out, or rosin dust. And you'll see that on this. I have put a little bit too much on mine, and whenever that happens, the rosin kind of eats away at the wood, so you want to get kind of a cloth to clean that every so often, kind of just like that. You don't want to touch the actual strings, but you want to get that off before it does any damage, because it's wood, and that and wood don't really play well together. It's kind of ironic in a way. But yeah, you have to kind of take care of your violin and know the pieces of which you want to know the pieces to it, and how each of them function and what they do. Because not all violins, or I doubt any violin, is that cheap. They all come at a pretty hefty price line, and some of them go even for millions. And you want to know the pieces to the actual violin before actually attempting to, you know, play it, because that's really a main factor of knowing what you want out of it, and really getting to know your violin better as a beginner.